Week 1, it's almost over, which I actually think is a good thing based on what we've seen so far.
Thank God for the Pats.
Couple of good games, a couple of teams that actually look decent, and then a lot of garbage. We're going to talk very briefly about a couple of those games, but really why we're here is to keep looking forward, because we have a couple of Monday night games, actually really 1.5. And then we have week 2, which has some exciting matchups. We're going to look at the lines that have been posted for those. We'll talk about them a little bit. We'll try and sort of guess where we think our number will end up being, because we wait, obviously, until all the grading is done to go ahead and run our model. So we'll do that. We'll keep it short. We'll keep it sweet because, well, it's late and we look like crap.
Yes.
So let's start with a couple of things from today. Let's start with the Sunday night game because we just suffered through it. It was exactly what I said it would be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was one of those where it was in the running. It was one of our picks, and it was in the running to be our best pick.
Should have,
probably. And it was everything in terms of what we talked about with Juju Smith-Schuster being shut down by Stephon Gilmore and others. It was, nobody else and the Steelers being able to step up. Dante Moncrief had 10 targets, I believe, for 7 receiving yards total. And then it was Tom Brady, Josh Gordon being that sort of receiver that they thought they were going to lack this year. And it seems like now they're going to get 2 of those guys. So pretty sweet. James White did James White-like things, and then he gave way to Rex Burkhead, who kind of iced the game. So it was a total complete effort for the New England Patriots.
Yeah, Rex Burkhead iced the game.
It was already iced.
Couple of points to back stats to back those up. You mentioned Gilmore on Juju. Juju just 43 yards when covered by Gilmore. And then I thought this was something similar to what the Patriots did actually against the Eagles in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, which is they just used play action and it just toasted the linebackers of the Steelers. Yeah. Tom Brady 8 for 11, like 130 yards and a touchdown off of play action. It was an all-around absolute drumming. I think they had 7 pass breakups. And then Ben Roethlisberger really struggled. At halftime, he had 1 completion on a throw more than 5 yards downfield. I think he got 1 or 2 more in the second half, but it was over at that point. It was over when Mike Tomlin kicked a field goal down 20 at the 1-yard line.
I mean, it was. If it was 18 and you're cutting it to 6, or if it was 19 and you're cutting it to 16, right. Which it turns into 2 scores. It's a little late, so my math is funny, but like that is still stupid. But it's like not the the worst thing. Cutting it from 3 scores to 3 scores. I mean, there's really no other word for it. I wonder if the optics of it are such where you're like, if you're Tomlin, you're sitting there, my team is getting blown out. I don't want to put up a goose egg. There's a chance we're not. I mean, the fact that how big your quarterback is, you should just be able to plunge in from there. But like, let's assume they thought it was a non-zero chance of converting. If they get blanked on opening night, there's probably something to that. Whereas, I don't know, people like you and me see, there's really no difference between scoring 3 points and scoring 0 points.
Right. Would have doubled their chance of winning. Now, the problem was their chance of winning was very small regardless. But that's kind of an interesting thing is it's hard with small numbers for people to grasp the magnitude of things. But like, hey, doubling your chances is still doubling your chances. You're trying to win the game. Anyways, that was way too much on the Sunday night game. Let's talk about a couple of games that were noteworthy today. Let's just kind of speed through them. Rams, Panthers. What stuck out to you?
I thought, we got lucky in this game. And frankly, I think, we had Rams -2.5. This was the only pick that we had that did not give us closing line value or the same line. So this one was at -3 when it's -2.5. That's when we grabbed it. And then it got all the way down to -1.5 and then back to -2. So there was certainly people betting on the Panthers. The Rams, in the first half, everybody sort of like sleptwalked through the game. But then the Rams got a turnover on a sort of a bad Cam Newton pass that ended up being a lateral. They punched it in. And then in the second half, it was sort of like a seesawing battle between two quarterbacks who are asking themselves who can generate more turnover-worthy plays. And ultimately, since the Rams had a lead going into the half, they basically equaled the score in terms of turnover-worthy plays, and the Rams ended up ahead.
So speeding through that game, the one thing that did stick out to me was Sean McVay kicking a field goal when he had an opportunity to close the door and shut it. And I was expecting this not to happen for Sean McVay. I thought he would turn it around. He did not. I was ultimately disappointed.
But don't you think though that I thought his offense actually was fairly, like, the plays were pretty good.
I agree.
And that was probably his focus. Like, if he went into the offseason and said, okay, I need to improve, like, he probably thought, I need to improve in my offense.
Sure, but that takes time. It literally takes no time to just be like,
I agree.
Make the play. Okay. We're going to speed through these because we're going to move on to week 2. It's what we promised. We said we would do. Your Chiefs destroy the Jaguars.
Yeah, Sammy Watkins is a guy that I've talked about for fantasy, but also ultimately, here's the thing with the Chiefs. Their defense still isn't very good. So, and Charvarius Ward I have to look up his numbers, but he gave up a ton in coverage today.
Yeah. It was 100 yards.
It's egregious. So even though it's good that they start out 1-0 on the road, covered, I believe Greenland had them covering, I'm a little concerned about their defense.
Okay. You're more concerned about the defense than you are Tyreek Hill being injured?
Yeah.
Okay. Wrong.
Why?
Because we knew their defense was going to be bad. It's not like all of a sudden the defense is far worse than we anticipated, but their calling card was going to be having a highlight reel offense. And you mentioned Sammy Watkins. He'll be hurt in 2 weeks.
I disagree because the Chiefs were planning for a significant part of this offseason not to have Tyreek Hill. And so I agree with you that Watkins is an injury risk, but I disagree with the idea that that Hill is some sort of like irreplaceable element of it. Like,
they're not winning the Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill.
Like they go like Travis Kelce was like okay today. Like they go through these, like LaShawn McCoy averaged 8 yards a carry.
You think they can win the Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill?
I think Patrick Mahomes, if Patrick Mahomes stays healthy, they can, and some permutation of Kelce, Hill, and Watkins, 2 of those 3 stay healthy the whole year, they can win the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Okay. I'm actually going to answer the question. They cannot win the Super Bowl without Tyreek Hill.
Okay. I disagree. I mean, their defense is bad. Like, let's assume their defense is good enough to win the Super Bowl while still being bad. I don't think Hill is the be all end all.
Okay. Interesting. Mahomes did get nicked up, by the way. That was,
and he gutted through it. It was scary, but yeah.
Right, but that's worrisome.
Right. That's why I qualify with the Mahomes. We can't not talk about the Ravens, right? I mean,
we could. They didn't even play a real NFL team.
Right. They beat Bama 59-10 on the road. Lamar Jackson was terrific. For
a running back.
Well, yeah, to his own thing. But the question begins, like, we're going to be asking this question, I think, for the first month, which is, what does beating the Dolphins mean?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. Are you worried about the following teams? The Browns.
No.
Okay. The Falcons.
Again, like the Browns, my expectations weren't tremendous for them, so no.
The Bucks.
Yes.
All right. Those, I feel like those were the noteworthy games. We'll talk about all the other teams as we go. Let's move on to week 2. Although let's hit the Monday night games as we go. So first Monday night game is actually a worthwhile game. It is the Houston Texans going into New Orleans to play the Saints, a team that should have been in the Super Bowl last year. Obviously was not. I'm assuming they come in with a chip on their shoulder. And this is depending on where you go, 7-point or 6.5-point game.
Yeah.
Your thoughts based on what you've already seen in week 1?
Yeah, the 6.5 is -120. The -7 is plus 100. So it's kind of right there. I think anybody talking about this game from a betting angle is saying right now that the Saints have won 1 game straight up in the first 2 games of the last 4 years, right? They come out slow and they struggle, all that kind of stuff. And I want to fade that nonsense,
yes.
to immensely. I think Houston is a team that is going to be much like Seattle today, who struggled, did not cover as almost a double-digit favorite against Cincinnati. I think Houston is going to try to get acclimated with all those new players. I think they're not that good to begin with anyway, and I think New Orleans is a very good team, starting frankly after Breeze with that defense, which has a ton of great players. I think this number's a little short, frankly.
The New Orleans Saints are about as complete a team as I think you'll find Patriots, probably number one, and by a long shot. But they have defensive players that can cover. They have offensive players that can catch the ball. They obviously have a top quarterback. But here's the big difference in this game is they have a coach that kind of knows what he's doing, and like Bill O'Brien has struggled to like be a GM and a coach at the same time. It hasn't really worked out. So I think that's the extra edge they need to make sure that they actually cover. I think Sean Payton wants to win this game by 50. So to me, that is where the value lies.
But, yeah. Okay. What do you think about the total? 52.5. It's the highest total of the weekend, along with the Chiefs, which went over today in Jacksonville. What do you think about the total, 52.5?
Well, given how the Cincy-Seattle game went, I'm never talking about a total ever again. But there's no way I'm taking the under.
Yeah. Well, we've seen today, like as you have in the sheet today, it was like, was it Cleveland versus Tennessee looked like a sure under, and then the one that actually did get under was Buffalo versus the New York Jets, and then Detroit was another clear one that ended up going over. It's just really hard because the NFL is so parity driven that these games end up close, and then you get scores in every game except for Cincinnati versus Seattle. So so there's that. Okay, Oakland Raiders at home. This game was a pick'em just recently.
Yes.
And then the Antonio Brown nonsense happens, and now we're talking about Denver as a 2.5-point favorite in Oakland, starting Oakland's last year in California. The Raiders last year as the Oakland Raiders in California. Oakland's being annexed too. So
that's great.
What do you think? What in terms of this game? I have not been interested much at all because Greenline is sort of
like ambivalent
towards it. So I haven't really thought about this too much.
Okay. This one is tough for me because I could not possibly want to fade an organization more than the Oakland Raiders, given everything that they've done. Everyone is very quick to blame Antonio Brown, and I'm not saying he should be absolved of his sins because the guy has done some things that are a little outrageous and ridiculous. And I overall am an Antonio Brown supporter. But the Raiders are not without blame here. Like, if you run a company or you hire someone, if you have to fire them, that is an indictment on you, right? Like, this is an indictment on the Oakland Raiders that they had to fire a guy that they hired in Antonio Brown. So I think they are a disaster. And I think the Broncos are one of those teams that's one of those middling teams, but they have a ceiling that is actually noteworthy because of what Vic Fangio can do from a scheme standpoint. And if everything clicks for that defense, they do have the pieces to be like that, what the Bears were last year. Now, who the hell knows if that's going to happen, and it's a very small chance. But I think there is the chance that the Denver Broncos just basically do what the Patriots did to the Steelers today.
I think this though is a pass game. I mean, like, in terms of if you're looking at to bet this game, I would pass because it's just like, so we had this exact same game, exact same place, Monday Night Football in like Christmas Eve or something, right? And it was like a sucker play, right? Everybody's betting the Broncos -2.5, all that kind of stuff. And I think that's what they're trying to get you to do. But ultimately, like, we just don't know enough about these teams. As you said, I think Denver's floor is a lot higher than Oakland's. I don't think Oakland really has a floor. But on opening night, we sort of hope, team being galvanized by sort of this idea of like, we're in it together, that type of thing, playing, for their coach, all that kind of stuff. We've seen this happen before. I would just lay off this game. I'm not betting Oakland. There's no way.
Right. But that's my point.
But I'm just leaving it be.
Okay, that was Monday night. Week 2. Let's go. That only took us like 15, 20 minutes. We're good. It's now actually
Midnight
Monday.
Eastern, yeah.
It's technically Monday. So, all right. I moved on to week 2 at about halftime of the week 1
when the Falcons
games.
didn't show up for their game?
Yeah, that was rough. So we had a debate on the last pod of what our lock of the week should be. And for those of you that are new to the podcast, when we win, if that ever happens on a lock of the week, we donate our winnings to charity. Now, the Falcons hate charity. And so they ended up just donating a loss, or a win, I should say, to the Minnesota Vikings by not showing up. I think Kirk Cousins threw the ball 10 times, which is half as many as Matt Ryan was just under pressure. It was an absolute disaster. Jake Matthews is missing in action. We're hoping that he's found soon.
Yeah, but we are not going the Falcons' direction.
No, we're going the opposite direction.
I think we're going to take a moratorium on the Falcons for a while.
Yeah, they're dead to me at this point. So, Tampa Bay, Carolina kicks this week 2 slate off. Both teams that were disappointing. Now, Cam Newton did not look good. It was basically Christian McCaffrey, and
looked very good.
If it wasn't for him, they would have lost by 30. Jameis Winston, however, was probably more concerning.
It's amazing. So that Tampa Bay San Francisco game managed to go under the total despite having 3 interceptions for touchdowns in the game, which told you how putrid both quarterbacks, offenses really were. Starting with Jameis, the 3 interceptions, the lack of pocket awareness. We have to have a discussion about Bruce Arians, who on a number of occasions, one time he actually did kick a field goal when they were down by a touchdown. Another time he wanted to, and then they had like a penalty, and then they moved him closer, and then they failed to convert in the red zone. So we all talked about Tampa Bay as being this marriage of Bruce Arians and Jameis Winston, and neither one kept up their end of the bargain yesterday now against the Niners. So looking at this number though, it's 6.5, right? And So let's try to unpack what's going into this. You have home field advantage, which is about 3, right? You also have the fact that Carolina is a better power ranked team than Tampa Bay. Mm-hmm. It's a Thursday night football game, right? Generally speaking, the better team not only wins Thursday night football but covers, right, as favorites. It's not that drastic, but it's statistically significant. So you're still thinking about, okay, Carolina is about 2 points better than Tampa Bay on a neutral field. Would you say that that's like a proper handicap at this point?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think this is pretty spot on. I personally would have said, man, this is either 6.5 or 7, and it just depends kind of which side you expect to come out hot first. I was massively disappointed in what Tampa Bay's offense was. It was really kind of an atrocity. Yeah. Their offensive line was a disaster. And Carolina, for all of the maladies that they have, they sort of have a high floor because of their ability. Like Cam Newton, if they have to, can run the ball. Christian McCaffrey, it's not very hard to get him the ball, and he's far above average. So,
but their defense is not good, and that was the thing. People who like them going into the season were all about. They brought in pass rushers. They still can't cover, and Goff left a lot of yards on the field there, but they struggled to get off the field on third down. Cooper Kupp made a ton of plays on them. Robert Woods made some plays as well, and the thing. So looking at this game, right, like. Now that the Tampa Bay is not facing like Ronnie Lott and the San Francisco 49ers defense, he gets a little bit of a downgrade here to Carolina's. Like, do we see was week 1 this like overreaction thing, right? Was it something where we look at this next Thursday night and Tampa Bay sort of figures the thing out and there's some value on them at plus 6.5?
Well, okay. So Tampa Bay is with the Atlanta Falcons on my list of never ever will it happen. Never. No. Jameis Winston is so lost and confused and despondent and terrible. That was awful, man. That was so bad. And the Ronnie Lott joke notwithstanding, the San Francisco 49ers can't cover anybody either.
Right.
That's the thing that's sort of concerning here is that he has all this talent. Now, I know that there was some sort of flu bug that went through and whatever, but you're playing at home. You have all this time to prepare, and you're playing a secondary that isn't very good, and you just get he just looked lost. So there's absolutely no way that I'm willing to venture back into Tampa Bay.
Okay, and for me, I think there's no way I'm rushing at all to back the Panthers by a touchdown or more to anybody.
I didn't say I was.
Yeah. So I unfortunately, I think for the second consecutive Thursday night, we might just pass on this game. We had the total, we had the under in the first Thursday night game, but and we don't know what the total is necessarily yet. I haven't put it down, but actually we do. It's 50.5. That's a good.
Yeah. It's a little high.
It's a little high, but I'm also not going underneath it because of the aforementioned. Today's game, Carolina versus the Rams, was basically a slugfest until halftime, and it still would have gone over this number. Like, that seemed to have been a lot of games that looked like under games in the first half ended up going over, for a number of reasons. Also, just to sort of backtrack and talk for a second, the holding penalties, the pass interference penalties, a lot to do about nothing the first week, as we predicted. Not a whole lot of changes to the fundamental nature of the game, except for the Browns, who had 18 penalties.
Fair.
Okay, so we're going to lay off this game probably.
Yes. Baltimore at home, and they, for the second straight week, get a terrible team. The Arizona Cardinals here. I thought this would actually be a 14-point spread. And that was at halftime of the first games. Mm-hmm. And my thought was Arizona's going to come out. They're going to struggle against the Lions. And they actually ended up putting up a fight, or Matt Patricia just laid down, one of the two, and kind of clawed their way back. So Baltimore favored by 13. Now, I think there is a big gap between Miami and Arizona. Is it big enough to make up the difference between like 50-point destruction and 12-point destruction? Because the Cardinals came back, but I wasn't super encouraged by it, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, this one's tough for me. The thing that I really like, so having it be 13, in fact, it's actually more towards Arizona, as Baltimore is only minus 105 right now on Bet Online. There's an enticement to betting the Ravens, right? You watch them have a rocking chair cover there. You sort of get this idea, what if they're up 21-0 in the second quarter again, type of thing. The issue is what we saw today. These like big spreads, it's difficult to hold a lead that big through a 4-quarter game. We saw it with Philadelphia. They came back and took a 12-point lead with like 3 minutes left, and Case Keenum goes through the back door and covers for Washington. Yeah. So, like, to me, again, I don't feel super confident backing Arizona plus the points. What I do kind of like is this over 43.
Oh, that's what the total is?
Yeah. 43, I understand where it's coming from. And Arizona's total today against Detroit was in the mid-40s as well. The Ravens was actually, I believe, like at 40 or in the 30s somewhere. So I get where it's coming from, but like, again, the Cardinals defense isn't much better than the Dolphins defense, and the Ravens, look like the team that wants to score points.
Yes, and they can cover, and the Cardinals receivers could not separate. Kyler Murray, it was not great for him. 3 for, was it 10, 20 plus yards downfield, 86 passer rating, went clean. Took 5 sacks. So I'd be a little nervous personally. 13 is just not a number that I would be willing to lay with the Ravens offense, because as explosive as it looked against a team that literally doesn't exist in the Miami Dolphins, the Cardinals, I think, have a little bit more going for them. I don't know. I'm with you, though. I think if I had to go one way, I'd go the total.
Okay, the Washingtons at home facing the red-hot Dallas Cowboys.
Redskins.
The Washingtons are they're 4.5-point underdogs here at home. At first glance, that number feels short.
Yes.
It looks like it did not incorporate what Dallas did today, and it's giving Washington a ton of credit for playing tough against Philadelphia on the road.
Yeah, for being up 17-0 and then getting rocked. Let's talk about Dallas here for a second. The Giants come out and score. looked unstoppable because of generational talent, Saquon Barkley, was not reproducible. Just can't score ever again in the entire game, and Dallas just, matriculates the ball down the field. Dak Prescott was like 13 for 13 off play action. It was a total joke.
He looked so good with play action. I mean, he like when he faked the handoff, like he looked like he was untouchable, and his throws were pretty accurate. I mean,
because Zeke was there.
you make a great point.
I mean, it's funny. I think part of it is probably a little bit of confidence, like as weird as it is. Like Zeke didn't look. I didn't think he did anything.
I mean, Barkley was the best back in the game by a country mile, and it didn't matter.
Yeah, it didn't matter, unfortunately. I am not impressed with Dallas's win against the Giants because I think there's a chance the Giants are just really bad.
Their
really
defense,
bad.
Their secondary was an absolute
really
atrocity.
Struggling, right?
Whereas Washington, granted, again, they gave it up at the end, but we're talking about a Philadelphia team that we think is one of the league's best.
Yes.
They got out 17-0, and made it really hard on them at first. Philadelphia had to go for a lot of fourth downs. They had to convert. They had to get I believe it was 3 touchdowns by Deshaun Jackson. Like they had to work for it. I still think, like, at first blush, 4.5 seems short to me. But it's hard to off one game's worth of data to go in and back a road underdog at more than a field goal and more than 4 even.
I'm the other way. I actually think Washington is a decent play here, in my opinion. I think 4.5. They're home. The Cowboys strike me as a team that overreacts, as the public does, to their own success.
Okay. Well, it'll be interesting to see where the numbers are at. Okay, now, the soon-to-be Super Bowl champion Tennessee Titans.
You got so excited.
At home, laying 3 against the Indianapolis Colts, who took the Chargers, a possible Super Bowl contender, to overtime today with Jacoby Brissett, but probably more importantly, Marlon Mack.
I am surprised by this. I thought that Tennessee would be at least a 3.5 point.
This seems short to
favorite, right?
Yeah.
And I maybe this is the same reaction, or the bookmakers had the same reaction that I had watching Tennessee Cleveland, which was Cleveland played better than Tennessee for a large portion of that game, then just made so many mistakes in a row that Tennessee ended up winning by like 30.
Yeah, I always have this opinion that no AFC South team is ever that good.
Right.
So,
I agree with
assuming
you.
Tennessee is 3 points better than anybody on any given Sunday is a faulty sort of assumption. That being said, the Chargers did a fair amount to keep Indy in the game. They fumbled a punt.
Yep.
They threw an interception in the end zone, and Malik Hooker made a really nice play on the play.
An incredible play.
Well, because we wanted the over in that game, and that they were going in for the over, and of course we had to sweat that one out more than God had intended.
Yeah, there's a couple nice jokes there, by the way, that are laying out there for you if you want them.
Yeah,
just letting the 3 viewers know.
It's late though, so okay. So if we're looking at this though, this is a game I want to see. I want to watch and be like, okay, let's like take some stock of the AFC South, because if you would have, we talked about this earlier in the offseason, like there was like a situation where betting Tennessee under 9 or 8.5 wins was positive EV, but then also betting on them to make the playoffs or win the division eventually became positive EV. And now we're in a situation where they're 1-0, and Houston plays tonight, and they could be very much, and Jacksonville might be buried because they don't have their quarterback for a significant part of the time. They could be in the driver's seat at some point, which is not something I ever thought I'd say about the Tennessee Titans.
Yes, I still think Marcus Mariota is not very good.
I'm with you.
So I think this is a case of the better quarterback and the better coach getting points.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I think it's bold. I don't hate it.
I'm not saying the margin is large on the quarterback side. I do think the margin is fairly large. Like I think Frank Reich is
right. If you combine the coach quarterback, I do agree with you there.
Did you watch we did not watch the games together, sadly.
Well,
but watching the end of the Indy game, and they are just running the ball repeatedly.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there like, man, does he know that they're down 8 points?
He massaged it perfectly.
Now, I think he got a little lucky because T.Y. Hilton's play or Thomas Davis's soul leaving his body were kind of lucky, right?
Yep.
But he was so confident in we are going to score, but we are going to score with no time left.
Yep.
And that was kind of cool. It was something that obviously was pretty ballsy, but in Frank Reich, I trust.
In any time a coach thinks about a second order consideration in a decision,
get excited.
I mean, look, I have to wipe my brow off a little bit. I start sweating.
Speaking of coaching, this was a disastrous week. The number of field goals that were kicked, Cliff Kingsbury liking threes this much is horrifying.
If you think you have to preserve your job in week one, you might as well. Like, to any of the coaches out there, you have at least the next 3 weeks. You're not getting fired before week 4 or 5. I don't know what you're doing.
I don't get that.
But it wasn't as bad. So to get back, there was Washington versus Cal. Washington was legitimately down 4 with 4 or 5 minutes left.
Late.
And kicked a field goal on 4th and 1 from the 2-yard line.
No.
And then got the ball back and drove down, kicked another field goal to go up 1. And I was thinking to myself, please let Cal win. I don't want to see this
payoff.
Chris Peterson get. And Cal won. Cal drove down 1, kicked the field goal 1.
Good.
And it was poetic justice. It kicked the entire Pac-12 out of the college football playoff race.
I mean,
I don't get it.
Brutal. Yeah. I was mad at people for hating on Cliff Kingsbury when he got hired because I am a believer in, wait till you see it. And I saw it, and man.
Coaches that think that they can get 2 field goals and a stop more easily than they can get 1 touchdown is an unbelievable situation in life.
It's just incredible. You hate to see it.
Okay.
Wow.
Buffalo, the Bills, 1-0, comeback victory against the Jets.
Oh, we're not going to talk about C. Pitt.
Well, I don't think that is the lineup.
Right. We just guess it. What do you think the line is? Seattle, because this is a good game.
Seahawks. We think.
The Seahawks fought off the testy Bengals, and John Ross, the resurrection of John Ross, go into Pittsburgh. Wilson, Roethlisberger. What do you think?
I think this is given how short some of these lines have been, I think that they put down Pittsburgh -2.5.
Wow. I think it's Pittsburgh -3.5. And here's why. The Pittsburgh love is strong. And the Patriots are just a very good team. And I think it should be 3, to be honest. But I think they get that extra little bump. They give them the hook because it's in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is a public team.
Okay. Right. I'll be interested to see. I could see 3.5. I could see 2.5.
If it comes out 3.5, I would want to bet the Seahawks.
3.5 implies that the market thinks of the Seahawks the way we think of them, which is a little less than ideal.
I didn't think their win today was all that impressive.
No, and I think that they struggle sometimes with some things that will keep them from being contenders.
All right, now we can move on.
Let's spend. So if we want a quick one, Giants Bills. How many minutes of your life are you going to spend watching this game?
Too many.
Okay. I mean, Giants are 2.5 point dogs here.
The Giants suck. But I am a Pat Shurmur fan. Pat Shurmur looks like
worn down.
He hasn't slept the entire offseason. The guy also went for 4th and 8 when he certainly should have. And, he has made some decisions that have been totally forgotten from an analytics perspective that most coaches just don't even consider. And I legitimately feel bad for him because he probably has the worst roster certainly offensively, right? Like that is just so bad.
Miami and Washington.
I'm talking about NFL teams.
Okay, sorry.
I mean, Washington, they can't be worse. Whatever. It's bad.
They're both bad. Yeah.
So I commiserate with Pat Shurmur. Now, getting 2.5 points at home against the fighting Josh Allens is tempting because I think Buffalo's a little fraudulent, but
their defense is good.
It's impossible for me, I think, now.
The Jets got an 18-point lead based on a defensive touchdown and a safety and one offensive touchdown.
How could you back the Giants right now?
I don't think you can. I think this is a layoff game. To me, the only thing that would get me interested is if Daniel Jones started.
Well, so that's the thing. They're going to be calling for Daniel Jones as soon.
I'm here for it.
Where does the line go if Daniel Jones plays?
I think it's a pick 'em.
If it's a pick 'em with Daniel Jones,
did you see Eli try to run that bootleg? You see him try to run that bootleg on that fourth down and try to shake Leighton Vander Esch?
Dude, just stop. It was hard to watch.
Who has a better chance of shaking Leighton Vander Esch? Me or Eli Manning?
You.
By a mile.
You got a sneaky spin move. All right, that was too much of this game. Actually, real quick, I want to pull up some Josh Allen stats here because I'm legitimately curious. I didn't watch a ton of this game.
The only stats that matter is the fact he's 1-0.
Well, that's the thing. That's all people are going to talk about. But I'm just curious here. So he went 24 for 37. That's for him. That's really good.
Stop.
He had 109 passer rating under pressure, 9 yards per attempt. I am going to fade that personally.
He threw 2 interceptions, and actually some of those interceptions weren't his fault. But then he threw probably one of the worst passes I've seen on like a turkey hole throw that Marcus May basically just like it went Keanu Neal against the Eagles on.
Yeah, man, it wasn't terrible. 53-1 passer rating, which is a terrible statistic when clean. 5.8 yards per attempt when clean is not ideal.
They gave Frank Gore 11 carries for 20 yards.
And Devin Singletary 4 for 70.
Was generational, yeah.
Wow. Give him more. Feed him the rock.
Okay, your Niners on the road coming to Cincy, Vegas to face the Bengals. Bengals are 2-point underdogs at home in this game.
The only question is, will the city still be standing after myself and Jimmy G hang out?
Are you guys going to hang out?
We've already got a couple of dinners scheduled. Should be a fun time.
After today, the real question is, I mean, for the Niners, to me, is are they going to wear road whites or scarlet reds in the Super Bowl? Like, which jersey do they choose to wear?
I think you got to go scarlet reds.
Yeah. No, I mean, the Niners defense had more interceptions today than they did all of last season.
Right. That's certainly
stable. I think the thing for the Bengals that was interesting was early on in that game, they faced a lot of pressure. Jadeveon Clowney got in a few times. But actually, as the game progressed, Andy Dalton / Zach Taylor ran more play action. They did some things that were effective. John Ross was tremendous. First career 100-yard game by a lot. Joe Mixon got injured, so to the degree that matters, Giovanni Bernard came in and was effective. Bengals defense looked better than normal, but again, it was against a Seattle team that's giving up first and second down every possession. Yep. So this is another one where I think we think that we have more information after week 1 than we really do.
Yes. Now, I think this is a complete slap in the face to the Bengals, who
100%.
I don't think are very good, but I thought the Niners were bad today. And if it weren't for George Kittle sticking up for, all Georges in the world and being a beast, that offense was bad, man. And I am kind of sarcastic whenever I talk about Jimmy G, but I really do think he, is like a good quarterback. And
he could be decent, yeah.
Could be decent. And is great looking, which obviously matters a lot unless your name is Cliff Kingsbury, who all of a sudden looks way less handsome.
That'll do. That'll do it to you.
Way less handsome now. So I think this is ridiculous. I think the Bengals should be 3-point favorites in this game.
Okay. Interesting.
I mean, you really saw something from the Niners today? The Niners won the game because Jameis Winston took a poop on the field. The cleaning crew right now is having a hell of a time in Tampa Bay.
I think the market views the Bengals in a similar cluster as the Giants, Washington, and Miami.
No, they have a real quarterback.
Even though they're not. Yeah. But the market thinks, oh, no AJ Green, no offensive line. They overvalue offensive line, right? No defense. They overvalue defense. And they're like, the Niners are handicapped to be an 8-9 win team. Okay, they should be 5 points better. That's the way this is going. So
they were a disgusting Zach Taylor 4th down decision away from maybe winning that game.
Outright, for sure. They covered as 9-point dogs, but they could have even won the game.
And if we know anything, it's that Kyle Shanahan will see your shitty decision
and raise
you one. Okay. I get a free bleep because it's past midnight.
Detroit +3 against the Los Angeles Clippers of San Diego.
That is correct.
Detroit today looked
bad.
Somehow got out to a lead and then surrendered that lead. Ended up with a tie. The second consecutive week 1 that ended in a tie. Where we had a tie in week 1. I think this line is too short. I think I was buying into Detroit having more talent defensively, and obviously Matthew Stafford being a real quarterback, as you said. But after one game, I was just preaching about don't overreact. But I honestly think other than the Chargers traveling West Coast to East Coast playing a 1:00 game, I don't really see why this number is only 3.
Yeah, man, dude, Taylor Decker
is
what? What was that? Him and Jake Matthews both were on Quaaludes during their opening games. It's just abortional, man. It's so bad.
And the Chargers obviously didn't. Austin Eckler 3 touchdowns, many from distance. He was terrific. Keenan Allen, I think, looked very good. Running routes, catching balls from Phillip Rivers. The defense will be a little shakier without Derwin James, etc. But I mean, they're just a class above Detroit. And after. I don't know how. So when a team should have won a game, then doesn't, right. They can respond in one of two ways, right? They can go into the tank and be like, "Oh, we can't even beat the Arizona Cardinals," or they sort of rally. I'm going to be on the side of going in the tank until I see otherwise from Detroit. Yeah.
I always sort of feel like Matt Stafford is a rallier of sorts. There were some
backwards hat.
So there were some bright spots I did think for the Lions offensively. I thought T.J. Hawkinson did a really nice job. Actually showed up as compared to some prior tight ends that they've drafted. Mm-hmm. Danny Amendola was decent. So if those guys are actually players, Kerryon Johnson can catch passes. Their offense should be decent. Now I think it got torpedoed by the fact that, as I mentioned, Taylor Decker just got absolutely rocked. But when he was clean, Matt Stafford, 140 passer rating, did some nice things. So I am wary of the Chargers kind of escaped. They won a hard game. I think maybe they're overlooking the Lions a little bit. I kind of like the Lions getting some points here. I don't know. I'm not a huge believer in the Chargers yet.
Yeah, I like the Chargers when they travel better than I do when
that's the thing. I do agree. It's that is overcompensated for.
Yeah. Okay, Green Bay, the site of 2 ties in the last 6 years of football, at home against Minnesota. Green Bay is a 3-point favorite. Minnesota impressive in their opening game. Only had, Kirk Cousins only had to throw the ball 10 times.
Yep.
Dalvin Cook rushed for over 110 yards. The defense was awesome. I mean, I don't know how much of that to attribute to Atlanta being terrible offensively, but Minnesota certainly did its end of the bargain defensively. Green Bay as well. The question then when we look at this game is, okay, how much do we have to sort of throw out week 1 because both opponents played so poorly offensively? I want to look at the total for this game because I think it probably 45 and a half seems like, to me, that seems like an under or nothing type of bet.
So I had 2 points here. The first is under. And the reason for that is that the Green Bay offense was disgusting in that game. And I actually don't think the Bears defense will be, I don't think it'll be that great. And so I thought that the low scoring was should be attributed a lot to the offenses in that game, that Green Bay Chicago game. It's really not a good game offensively. So I have zero faith in LaFleur and the offense for Green Bay. And the Minnesota one is really strange because, I mean, they just gave the ball to Dalvin Cook and he just ran over everyone. And you would assume that does not happen here.
Well, and then the other thing is they never put Kirk Cousins in a position. I mean, like literally the Falcons got the ball and then got a punt blocked.
Right.
And then Cousins threw a touchdown to Thielen and we're off to the races, right? And then, Atlanta, basically got nothing accomplished in the first half.
Nope.
And Minnesota with a lead, I think Kirk Cousins, to me, that's one situation where he's pretty good. He's not good at coming back. He's not good at playing square with a really good team, but he's fairly decent at front running, and he did a pretty good job today. He only needed to complete 8 passes, but was efficient on them. And Alexander Madison as well. They not only gave it to Cook, they gave it to Madison 9 times for over 5 yards a carry. It was kind of a complete commitment to the run. We know that if that's a continuous thing, it's going to get found at some point. We're not against a good defense; they're going to take that away from you.
Here's the tough thing I have, and I think we're all a little guilty, maybe except for a few haters out there, of Aaron Rodgers can do things that other people can't really do in terms of throwing a football, and it's cool, and so it's tough to bet against Aaron Rodgers because you just never know, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially when you compare him to Kirk Cousins, that gets magnified. So it's super hard for me to want to do that. I do think Minnesota's by far the better team, though.
I think so. And for me, Lambeau Field has traditionally been a difficult place for them to play.
Right.
But the fact is the Vikings defense has done a really good job with Aaron Rodgers sans a couple of games, to the point of knocking him out of one game.
Mm-hmm.
I think Christmas Eve of 2016 was the last time he had a really good game against them since 2014. So, I think they'll mitigate him to the point where he's not actually somebody to worry about anymore, strangely. And so if that's the case, it's all about Kirk Cousins, and then it's basically a coin flip in that regard. I'm probably going to lay off this game anything other than the total, which I think is probably a pretty good underplay.
Yes, I like that as well. Jacksonville at Houston, no line yet. What do you think it's at?
Minus, well, it depends upon what happens tonight, but I would say anywhere from -7 to -10 if Minshew plays.
Yeah, I'm going to go with -10. I think Minshew is going to play, I believe. It did not look like Foles was in good shape. The Manchurian Candidate will be out there. The Chiefs' defense terrible, and I think that there's really nothing to take away from the Jags' offense being any good. New England at Miami. Now, I actually saw this at 14.5 a couple of places, so why don't we just go with that?
Okay.
Which would be, were they? Was it 10.5 the last time they were huge favorites in Miami?
Last year they were 7 to 10, I think.
The year before I think was 10,
and
they lost.
They lost both of those, yeah. So they've lost in Miami the last 2 seasons as more than a touchdown favorite in both cases. I don't see that happening here. Interestingly, right, New England, we did that strength of schedule article. New England had the easiest schedule in the NFL, and it's particularly easy from now until about week 6 or 7. They had. They presumably had a tough one, yesterday. It wasn't so, and so now this is a string of pretty simple ones for them. The question is do they overlook this team?
No.
Yeah, I don't think so. So
it'll be Antonio Brown's first game.
Okay,
that's one thing. The second thing is that you could overlook the Miami Dolphins, and it wouldn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. Do you lay the points though? 14.5.
You know why I'm probably going to is because I enjoy hearing about sharp bettors.
Yeah.
And
value.
Yeah, enjoy that.
Okay.
Sucking down a Twinkie here.
Speaking of Kansas City at Oakland, Oakland
Losers.
is a 9-point underdog at home. Despite Oakland hasn't played yet, but Kansas City, we've seen them. Again, the sort of same thing. We're looking at a home divisional dog that's getting almost double digits. Kansas City repeatedly covers these, right?
They do.
We saw, like, to your point, everybody said there were two sharp positions this weekend. It was Carolina, from 3.5 down to 3, down to 2.5, and Jacksonville from like 5 to 4.5 to 4 to 3.5. Finally, at -3, there were some people betting on Kansas City. Of course, those value plays don't always work out. In the case of Oakland here, I have a hard time backing them as well, even at almost double digits.
It'll be interesting to see what Oakland looks like, obviously. But the tough thing here is that Kansas City dominated that game, but I thought that they did get banged up. Obviously, Tyreek Hill is not playing for a couple of weeks. Mahomes took a couple of shots. It's not like Kansas City do this, and I'm not sure they can really afford to because their defense is so bad. They kind of have to go out and try and score points, but you wonder if they just try to eke one out. I don't know, maybe run Damian Williams a lot.
Well, last year in Oakland, Kansas City was right after the Kareem Hunt suspension. It went from -15 to -14, and it was a shootout, and Oakland backdoored them, lost by 7.
Right.
That's always the situation when you're laying that many points, is this idea that the dog, if they are alive at all, can come in and get in through the back door.
The difference between New England and Kansas City is New England basically just had a practice tonight, and I think Kansas City actually had to play. They played in a tremendous amount of heat.
One of their best players is probably out.
Yeah, so those things matter. New Orleans plays in Los Angeles. This is by far the best game of the week. All due respect to Buffalo, New York, and Arizona, Baltimore. That should be a great one too. What do you think the line is when this one actually gets released?
I think the Rams end up -2.5.
Ooh, I think the Rams 3-point favorites.
Okay, those are, I think we'll talk about this game more as the week progresses. But I think New Orleans is the better team. But I think the lack of the one less day of rest, and then as well as whatever home field advantage the Rams have, will give them the -2.5, but not the full 3.
Yeah, well, I kind of want it to be 3.
So you can bet New Orleans? Okay.
Dude,
to tell you where it should go then.
Right. Chicago at Denver.
The Vic Fangio Bowl.
Can't wait.
So
this is kind of interesting.
Yeah, right, because Chicago, I can totally see them coming out and just dump trucking the next team they face. Mm-hmm. But there are systemic problems with the Chicago Bears. Mitch Trubisky was throwing turnover-worthy plays consistently, and when he wasn't very accurate.
Nope.
They had an affinity for Mike Davis in the ground game.
Love to see it.
And defensively, like we said, they were still every bit as good as they were last year, but they did not produce turnovers, and the lack of producing turnovers really does hurt you, right? Like, if they got 3 turnovers against the Packers, they probably would have won, and it would have been reminiscent of 2018. Instead, it's not. Denver, a very difficult place to play in September because of the altitude and the heat. So if I were to handicap this, I'd probably, given the strength of the two teams, I'd also put it at probably -2.5.
Ooh, interesting. Yeah, the Chicago game was not impressive for Chicago, but it would be interesting to see what Denver does, obviously. But right now, I would kind of say maybe more of a pick. I just think the public likes Chicago. They're probably not ready to give up on them.
Okay.
I'm not looking forward to watching that game, by the way.
Speaking of something that's about a pick, Philly going to Atlanta to face our Falcons.
Yep.
This, I believe, Atlanta's +1 in this game. So Philadelphia is favored on the road in Atlanta against our Falcons by only 1. Seems to me the sort of difficulty here.
Oh my God. I just can't do it. Can't do it with Falcons anymore, man. You can't come out and look like you just literally had no idea the season started today. You can't do it.
The Eagles did as well, but they actually came back and showed some life. Granted, they played Washington and not Minnesota.
Because they have Doug Peterson.
Right.
And Doug Peterson, puts his brain in his head before he walks out of the door in the morning.
Going for fourth downs repeatedly. He went for a fourth down in the second quarter, didn't get it, had the ball
undeterred.
Fourth and 1 at his own 31, I believe.
36.
Undeterred, went for it, got it.
Scores a touchdown on that play. That was the beginning, and the rest is history, and they probably win this game by 50.
Yeah.
There was a point in that Atlanta game where I was just telling the people I was watching the game with, I was like, Atlanta gets, blanked in this game. They just fire everyone.
Well, I mean, what was the Dirk Cutter thing if it wasn't to speed up the offense and make them better?
Brutal, man. I mean, I'm sure there will be value on Atlanta because metrically they've somehow managed to still be like a decent offense or whatever in that god-awful representation of a game. But no way. Not today, Satan.
Yeah.
This feels short. Philly, far better team. Cleveland at the Jets. The Jets are getting 2.5 points to a team that got roasted by a team that was considering starting Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. You like that little
some transitivity there. Cleveland, so Cleveland is favored in this game, 2.5. Basically, again, asking you to bet them, right?
Yep.
Knowing that at this time of the year, there's always going to be value on this sort of stinky underdog team in the Jets. Last season, we saw this matchup in week 3 in Cleveland, and the Jets had the perfect game plan for Tyrod Taylor. They go in with Mayfield. Mayfield goes ahead and wins them the game. At the time, Sam Darnold seemed like he was incapable of throwing anything but a screen pass to Quincy Enunwa.
Or they hadn't planned on anything about that.
And now he does look like an actual NFL quarterback. That said, he was not good at it yesterday. So I think we're looking for both teams to improve here. I do not hate the idea that Cleveland's 5.5 points better than the Jets on a neutral field. And so I don't know how involved I'm going to get in this one.
Yeah, not much is my takeaway as well. So I want to close out with this. I felt as though we said that about a lot of games here. You have to take one side of one game. Where are you going?
That is right. We like to be driven by the model, right? And we currently haven't run ours yet. So it's.
But I do think that we're generally, I don't know. I always sort of feel like I lean in certain ways.
Sure. If I had to take one of these, I'm going to go Tennessee -3 at home against the Indianapolis Colts.
Interesting. Got a reason?
I was not a believer in Tennessee's defense last season. I thought that their schedule was, basically just a bunch of crap teams. But today, I'm fairly convinced that they have a good defense, and I think Brissett is a passable quarterback. But I think they emptied the tank a little bit this week. And so I don't know how much Indy actually scores in this game, in which case I hopefully can trust Tennessee to get out to 17 to 20 points and get the cover.
Wow. I was not expecting that. Also, it's very late when you cite defense early in your argument. That is good. I am a little torn here between a couple. I think Cincy +2. I like that quite a bit. I just see no reason why the Niners are a better team than the Bengals. That just doesn't compute to me. But the one I think I like more is Philly in Atlanta, just owning the Falcons. Philly sort of came out and just didn't play, but if you ignore that piece of it, I mean, they were really impressive. It's tough because I think Carson Wentz did some things on the right side of variance that probably even out a little bit, but just as a team from top to bottom, from coaching to everything else, and I have never seen the Falcons show up when they need to show up.
Yeah. I know. I mean, it's uncanny that in the Dan Quinn era, that's like, past the Super Bowl, but like 2017 to now, they, they show up when you don't expect them to, and then they don't. Like last season against week 2 against Carolina, covering 6 was like quintessential Falcons.
Yep.
Going on the road and throttling Washington as an underdog, quintessential Falcons. But basically no showing in a game where I didn't actually mention this one, but Atlanta was also another one, was like in the pros versus Joes. All the pros were on Atlanta, and that's why it was 4 to 3.5.
Yep.
And so like, and that's like kind of is where you find value. Like the average person is like, oh, the Falcons just stink all the time, and like, well, they stink half the time, so you can get some value the other half. But I'm with you. I don't know if I can trust them even at home. I think Philly learns more lessons from this week than Atlanta does. Let's just say that.
And that tells you something. All right. I'm tired. Need to go to bed. I'm sure you
Same
need
here.
to. Have a good one, and we'll see you guys on Thursday.
Thanks for watching the PFF YouTube channel. And if you want to subscribe, all you have to do is push the button. Don't forget everything you get. A little fantasy, push the button. A little green line for the gambling aspects of the game, push the button. College football, push the button. The YouTube channel from PFF.